USC's freshman takeover is not just some cute week 0 story. It could completely change Lincoln Riley's 2026 season. So on this episode of the Big Ten Huddle presented by FanDuel, we're looking at how USC suddenly looks younger, maybe a little bit more riskier, but maybe a little bit more dangerous than expected. Because when a program like USC puts 5 true freshmen into starting spots on its opening depth chart, there are really only 2 ways to read it. Either USC is being forced to play younger players before they're ready, or Lincoln Riley and his staff may have found one of the best young cores that we have ever seen in the Coliseum, and they're going to be arriving this season. And which one of those is true could be the difference between USC being an 8-win team or becoming something much more interesting. You see, there was the depth chart released yesterday by USC. And USC on their week 0 depth chart has 5 true freshmen listed in starting roles. You have defensive end, Luke Wafle, the 5-star, highly coveted. It took him away from Ohio State. That was a huge win for them. Corner Elbert Hill, tight end Mark Bowman, wide receiver Kayden Dixon Wyatt, and other wide receiver Trent Mosley, who we talked about, all 5 of these guys on this channel at some point. For those freshmen who earn starting roles outright on the depth chart, USC is also carrying several other kind of like or distinctions elsewhere. So this is not a roster where every answer is settled and the freshmen are just sprinkled into garbage time roles. They are the plan, and that matters because true freshmen starting at USC should get your attention, for 2 completely opposite reasons. The first is obvious. If a freshman beats out an older player at a place recruiting like USC, that can be a very good sign. But the second issue is the one that fans tend to skip in August. The Big Ten does not care how talented you were in high school. A freshman can look fantastic against an opening opponent and then spend October getting tested by veteran offensive linemen, experienced corners, disguised coverages, and physical run games. That's the tension USC is walking into here. And that's exactly where the FanDuel number gets really, really interesting because USC is currently favored at minus 220 to win 8 or more games on FanDuel, but it's plus 110 to win 9 or more games. That gap is basically the entire conversation. 8 wins says USC, good enough to handle most of its schedule, but 9 wins makes you a playoff contender. And you actually might even make the playoffs with 9 wins this season, but you have USC alumni saying it needs to be at least 10-2. Well, consistency is where your roster is needed most with this many freshmen starting and this many young players starting, because freshmen do not usually fail because they lack talent by any means. They fail because of the game speed, because the margin gets smaller, and the same mistake that costs you 7 yards in September can cost you 7 points in November. So let's start with 2 freshman receivers that I mentioned earlier, because this may be the most immediate part of this story. Kayden Dixon Wyatt and Trent Mosley are both sitting in starting spots on USC's depth chart that they released yesterday. This is a massive opportunity. USC has always been a place where a young receiver can become a name quickly because the offense gives skill players chances to create space and attack downfield. But this is not just about getting a few design touches. If these guys are starting, Lincoln Riley may need them to be functional in every down, as every down Big Ten receivers earlier than they expect them. That means winning releases, reading leverage, blocking, adjusting routes, being where the quarterback expects them to be when the defense rotates after the snap. The highlight catches are the fun part. The boring details are what keep a freshman on the field. If USC gets those details from Kayden Dixon Wyatt and Trent Mosley early on, excuse me, this offense may have more depth than people realize. And apparently they've seen some of this in camp too. You don't just earn a starting role by making one-handed catches in camp. You earn it by doing the things you're supposed to do. There's also a potentially important week 1 variable here, or week 0 variable here. Because if Terrell Anderson is not available, those young receivers could be asked to carry even more of the load. That's not something USC can hide for a month. They may have found that right away, but that needs to be talked about too because he is not on the depth chart at all. So I assume he's injured, but I guess we'll see. Now you go to Mark Bowman at tight end. This one may be even more revealing. Wide receiver is one of the easier places for a freshman to flash before you can isolate a skill set. Tight end is different though. You're asking a young player to understand protection, run fits, route adjustments, leverage, and physical assignments against older defenders. So if Bowman is legitimately ready to start, that tells us USC believes he can handle more than a handful of athletic packages. And that's the bigger point with the entire freshman class. You do not put 5 true freshmen into starting roles just because they are exciting prospects. You do it because you believe they can help you win right now. But here's the part that could change USC's entire season. The freshmen are not concentrated in one, safe area. They're spread across the roster. 2 receivers, a tight end, a defensive end, like we talked about with Luke Wafle, Elbert Hill, a corner. That means this is not one position coach taking a chance on guys. This is staff wide. This is something that the entire staff is seeing with the freshmen that are on the team right now. Sorry, I had to get a drink. And defensively, Luke Wafle and Elbert Hill, the defensive end in the corner that I talked about, may tell us the most. Wafle is starting defensive end. If he can give USC real pass rush snaps immediately, like I think he can, that changes the math for the entire defense. Young edge players can survive early because of one elite trait. Their burst, their bend, their speed into power, their jump, their get off. That can get them onto the field before the rest of the game or before the rest of their team because maybe they're not fully developed yet, but once they get fully developed, they're going to be dangerous. But Big Ten offenses will test whether this can hold up when teams run at him. They will make him play assignment football. They'll make him diagnose instead of just attack. That is the developmental test. Then there is Elbert Hill at corner. Corner may be the most unforgivable freshman position on the field because everybody can see your mistake. A defensive lineman loses a rep and the linebacker might clean it up. A corner misses a rep and you might have a safety back there, or the receiver could just be behind you for 6 yards and you're just trying to catch up, hoping maybe the throw is off a little bit so that way you can catch up. But if Hill is good enough to start this early, USC may have found something of incredible value. A young cover player who can grow with the defense instead of forcing the Trojans to patch that spot year after year. And remember, the depth chart also lists Chasen Johnson and Rock Hill with an or at the other corner spot. So we'll see what goes on there, but this secondary is not entering the season as some totally, settled veteran group. There is competition, there is youth, there is upside, and there is competition going to be happening during the game as well, not just in practice, it looks like. So that brings me to the biggest question here. What does all of this mean for Lincoln Riley? Because I actually think people are going to oversimplify this. If USC goes 8-4, one side will say, same old USC, 8 wins, it's not enough. I get that. But the other side will say, well, they're just young. Give them another year. Did you see how many freshmen they started? And that was kind of what Sharon Moore was getting at Michigan last season until his whole debacle, which I don't think Lincoln Riley's going to have a Sharon Moore debacle, hopefully. But I do not think either answer is automatically right. The real question should be, did the freshmen look like the reason USC was limited, or did it look like the reason USC's future suddenly got better? And there's a huge difference. And remember, this is only a hypothetical if USC is 8-4, because if USC is 8-4, young receivers cannot get because they can't get lined up, or a freshman corner keeps getting targeted, or they're off their routes, or whatever it might be. But if USC is 8-4 and these freshmen are already becoming some of the best players on your roster right now, well, then I think the conversation changes at that point, and the conversation about Lincoln Riley changes at that point, because now Lincoln Riley would not just be selling recruiting rankings or future potential, he would have actual actual young Big Ten, all Big Ten type of players, Big Ten award players, maybe even freshman All-American, who would be actual evidence for you. And if USC was 9 or more wins while starting this many freshmen, then they have a completely different conversation. There is a lot of hope. There is a lot of optimism for the future, because that would mean Riley is not waiting for the rebuild. He is accelerating it. He is making it happen. He is looking at this and saying, hey, if we can be playoff contenders our first year with 5 freshmen starting, imagine what we can be when these guys are getting older. And look at the next recruiting class. We might have some of those guys and we develop them. Then you're looking at a developmental program, which, yeah, 5 stars are easier to develop than other ones, but still, it's a developmental program. That's why I keep coming back to the 8 versus 9 win line. The difference is only 1 game, but perception-wise, it's enormous. If you get to 10 wins, all of this is over and negligible. But 8 wins feels like USC trying to climb out of the middle. 9 wins feels like the 5 freshmen starting to feel like the beginning of something. And 10 wins, like I said, now we're just talking about a team that might be arriving in the playoffs and everybody's going to be excited about, and Lincoln Riley won't have to worry about a thing. That's the upside that nobody should ignore. But there is one more warning sign. USC cannot fall in love with being young, right? Youth is an explanation. It cannot become your identity. At some point, these players have to just stop being impressive freshmen and become good Big Ten football players, which I think they will. But it has to happen quickly in the season for USC to be good, because you have some big games early on with Oregon and others and stuff like that at the beginning of conference play. That's what will determine whether the depth chart is remembered as a warning or the moment USC's rebuild actually became real. So when USC opens the season, don't just watch the final score. Watch those 5 freshmen. Watch whether Kayden Dixon Wyatt and Trent Mosley look dependable or explosive. Watch whether Bowman can stay on the field in every situation. Watch whether Wafle holds up when teams run at him. Watch whether Hill survives when quarterbacks decide to test the freshman, because USC's most important development may not be one veteran star. It may be that Lincoln Riley just handed a huge piece of the 2026 season to players who were in high school a few months ago. And if they're ready, USC's ceiling just changed. If you want more Big Ten football analysis and talk, stay here with us at the Big Ten Huddle. Like the video, subscribe, and do the hype button down below. I don't know what it does, but apparently it does something for us. I think it might have like a leaderboard for followers and subscribers too. So if you want to be in the lead, do that. We appreciate it. Let me know what your thoughts are on the 5 true freshmen starting, or the potentially 5. I kept saying 5. With Elbert Hill, it's potentially 5 freshmen starting. Are you excited for USC this year? Are you nervous? Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks. Have a good one.